It's Aaron from Got a Minute, and it's Jarrett from Supernatural by Design. Hello,
By
Jarrett. How are you?
design. Good. How you doing?
Doing good. How about you guys out there? Is everybody doing okay? Let us know if you can hear us. And this is a live stream. At the moment, it's March 1st, my time, March 2nd, probably for some people in Australia and that time zone. But we are here to talk about Jesus and his soon return and our soon departure. And all sorts of different categories of interesting things that are grabbing our attention. And without further ado, we've got lots of notes and lots of little things that we could talk about. And maybe we'll open up to some questions near the end as well.
That's good.
We did
Yep.
that last time, Jarrett. That was kind of
Yeah.
fun.
That
Okay,
was a lot of fun, actually. So, yeah, we can definitely do that.
good.
Early, middle, late, whenever. It's up. However, the Holy Spirit.
So yeah, hey, you know what? It could happen on the rapture could happen today, it could happen tomorrow, it could happen on a feast day, it could happen somewhere randomly in between. Nobody knows. We're just a bunch of human beings that are taking our best guesses. The thing that Jared and I both seem to be connecting with is we think that this is likely an event as an escape from potential war, potential nuke activity, that kind of thing. And so why don't we start on that theme and then bounce
Okay.
around a little bit. And so, what did you think about Vladimir's speech and Biden's speech and Kamala Harris's statement the other day, about a week or two ago?
Well, I just think it's just moving more towards war. It doesn't seem that. Um, well, I don't know. I kind of think that Russia, to be fair, is actually the more cooler head here. But it just seems like we, as the West, NATO continues to poke the bear. Um, and so I don't know if there's going to be anyone that can come in and kind of resolve that. But it just appears that the West and NATO really they literally want a war with Russia. And I feel like Putin is trying to do what he can. He's being patient. He's being calm. As much as he can. But I mean, if they just continue to throw weapons and money and all kind of stuff, I mean, it just really, um, I think is ill advised. I mean, um, I think on the onset, Putin was just like, look, if Zelensky just says, hey, we'll never join NATO, we're good to go, and that wasn't good enough for Ukraine or the West, and so. Honestly, I think a lot of this could have been avoided. Um, but yeah, so I just think we keep poking the bear. We just keep, and now we're poking the dragon, and so now we're like,
What's that song? Hi, my name is Joe, and I work in a button factory.
yeah,
Yeah, that's a good point. Poking the dragon and the bear. That's going to end bad.
yeah.
Um,
What are your
yeah,
thoughts
and
on it?
well, Camilla Harris, she comes out and says, "What crimes against humanity?"
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
That's a strong statement.
it is. It is.
And what was it? I don't know what it's called, but Russia has walked away from that agreement, right? What's that agreement called again?
The New START Treaty or the
Yes,
START Treaty.
yes,
It's the START Treaty.
the nuclear treaty. Yeah, okay. Hmm.
Um, yeah, that was the last one, man. The gloves are off now at this point. For nuclear pursuits and tests and research and um, I believe it had to do with storage. So yeah, it's progressing.
And Bell says, with all the factories going up in flames, all these train wrecks.
Yeah,
Um, my goodness, it's like a pre-planned, like Dr. Barry said in his video. I watched some of it today, but it's like you wake up and you go, "Oh, where's the train wreck today?" You don't even question if there is a train wreck. You just question where is it.
where is that happening at today? Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
who's bombing who today? Who's getting mad at who today? And
Mm-hmm.
so we've got to be getting close to this and this is what I expected. This is what I said about a month ago, or even more. I expect more escalation, and it's
Yep.
certainly happening. Some drones, took out something in Russia the other day. Um,
Yeah, Yeah, so that one is really interesting with Belarus, right? So the story is that um, some pro Belarusian or pro Ukrainian Belarusians sabotage some planes or something like that. But that's not what a lot of locals are saying. They're saying it was actually Ukrainians that actually targeted this a few drones um, um, in Belarus on the tarmac there, and it was a couple of days previous to that that the Belarusian president Lukashenko said that, hey, if we get attacked by Ukraine, we're jumping in. And so I think it's a really fascinating development, just because that's what that World War Z video was depicting, that Belarus somehow is involved in this war at some point. And so you continue to see this escalation from the Belarusian president as far as his willingness to join the war has been totally different from over a year ago to now. He's like, yeah, if they throw a punch, we're jumping in. And so you're seeing that, um, it's really interesting. There's a lot of interesting moving parts. And and to that point, the Belarusian president flew to China. I think it was either today or yesterday. And there's rumors that it's to facilitate China sending arms through Belarus to the Russians. So it's really interesting. Belarus is getting more involved as we speak, and so it's interesting.
Okay, so you there's no going back at this point. Would you say, Jared, as a basic?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think 2020. I think we the situation, the CV-19s, that was the start of the game. And I would argue it technically started 11/11 of 2019, because just a few days after that you had your first reported case in Wuhan. And so it's just been a snowball ever since, until it officially became a situation on 3/11, which is what that Super Bowl thing points out. And so there's an 11 connection there. And so that's really interesting in that regards.
This is a good timing to show you this chart. Well, you can't see it too good here, and I'm not technically advanced, but we got our March Madness chart.
Ooh.
And March 2nd and March 3rd, all 322s going left and right.
Yes.
Third month, second day, and we've got 2023. So basically, the next 2 days, very interesting. Could be lots of interesting things happening on the category of war. March 11th, what you just brought up. Yeah, good argument. It could have happened in 2019, but who declared it a pandemic on March 11th?
The WHO.
The WHO. Who said it? Who called it? The WHO.
Who called it?
Yeah, they called it, bro. Anyway, so March 11th, which is basically a 322, because 11, 1 + 1 is a 2. As you know, you're an 11 guy. Yep. And so that we're approaching the 3-year anniversary of the official pandemic declaration by WHO.
Yes.
Another 322 date to watch this month is March 20th, because well, it's a 322, but it's also the date that the Iraq War officially started in 2003.
Oh wow, that's interesting.
So there's your 2s and your 3s. So again, it's March 20th, 2003. So it's a 3-2.
That's really interesting.
2-3. And that's a few days before the beginning of the year of Nissan 1. Nissan 1 being March 26th, March 22nd, more or less.
Wait, what day was that?
Nissan 1?
No, the Iraq War.
Iraq War, March 20th, 2003.
That's really interesting. Okay.
So we're approaching the 20-year anniversary of that. And so we've got the 3-year anniversary coming up on March 11th. We've got the 20-year anniversary of the Iraq War starting on March 20th. March 22nd is a big deal. It's the beginning of the year, Nissan 1, we were just discussing. It's also the most perfect 322 day. It's the perfect Skull and Bones day. It's a 322 forwards, 322 backwards. I don't know if the viewer saw one of my videos. Is the Nintendo game that's coming out. It's called Here Comes Death. and you're basically the character of a Skull and
Yeah.
Bones character flying around killing people in what looks to be hell. I mean, horrible, you know. And then there's 2 more dates, March 23rd and March 30th as 3/22 days. So I've called this March
Hmm.
Madness. I've got about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 days to really kind of consider more escalation and evil things happening. Do I think they're rapture dates? I have no clue. I'd like them to be
Interesting.
departure dates. I don't know. As many people know, I like the idea of getting out of here as soon as possible. I like
Tonight.
Passover. Yeah, I like but I think the biggest thing that I've been holding on to this year was that eclipse. Hoping we are out of here before that eclipse, April
Yeah.
20th,
Yeah.
and that would lead me back to your studies. We talked about it in the last live stream,
Uh-huh.
but you've made the correlations to April 20th because of the eclipse and how it kind of relates to the timing of Hitler and how that's a foreshadow of the Antichrist.
That's
Um,
correct.
yeah, I don't know if you want to touch on some of that stuff.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. So, how I was led to that connection initially was through the story of Esther and Haman, and the fact that Haman is really your first example. Well, this is your second example. Don't quote me on that. It might be a third. I think, well, for all intents and purposes, second. But anyways, that he wanted to exterminate the Jews, right? And interesting, I want to say it's chapter 3, verse 13, where he picked the 13th day, and that's why Purim is on the 13th day. So there's
Yeah,
actually kind of
Purim
an
is,
interesting connection there with the verse and the day that's actually mentioned in the verse.
when is Purim? It's March 6th and 7th, right? This year.
That's correct. Yeah.
So that's the beginning of the week, Monday, Tuesday, that kind of time is Purim.
Um,
And Purim, basically, if anybody doesn't know, Purim is essentially at the time when
yeah.
the Jews were able to protect themselves from total annihilation. But it happened. The first decree that the king wrote was basically, "Hey, you have my permission to go kill the Jews." And then
Yep.
Esther stepped in, intervened,
Yep.
and then that created Purim, where she kind of advocated for the Jews, and the Jews were able to protect themselves with the second decree.
Yep.
And then there you go. There's Purim. And so,
Yep. Yep. And it's true. It's so Esther 3, verse 13 says letters were sent out by the couriers to all the kings and provinces to annihilate and kill and destroy all the Jews, both young and old, women and children, in one day, the 13th day. And so it's interesting. That's the 13th day in verse 13. And so, but basically that is the same, cause that Hitler was after, right? And so that's really where that connection in part was. That one was that. Secondly, is that from the Talmud, he's also associated with Pisces when he made this decision in the month of Adar. And so the eclipse itself is in Pisces. And so it's more so pointing towards Haman than it is Hitler necessarily. Now, it just so happens to land on Hitler's birthday. It was also part of the same sorrow cycle when Hitler came to power. Yes, but it's more associated with Haman. And Iran is where historically that story took place. So you see this escalation happening between Iran and Israel. And I would argue it's because of this eclipse is pointing to that. So, in fact, I wouldn't be surprised if Israel attacks Iran here soon, because the purpose of Purim is to celebrate God's deliverance from Haman's plot, right? And so if you have that whole Iran to deliver them from Iran's plot, there might be some correlation here with maybe some sort of an escalatory event here with a week.
Well, actually, be pretty timely. I read an article that they'll have enough uranium or whatever within 12 days, I think.
Yeah, 12 days. Yep.
To create a nuke. Okay.
Yep.
So, and they've got a missile that's already pointed at Israel, saying "Death to Israel" or
Yep.
something like that.
Yep.
So, this Purim would be a significant time for Israel.
And this conjunction is in Pisces, right?
Wow.
So,
Right
so
now,
there's a lot.
right now,
there's
today,
there's a
right?
lot. Yeah, hindering on this Pisces connection.
Mm-hmm. Another conjunction that's
Excuse
in
me.
Pisces is Jupiter and the Sun.
Yeah.
Actually, you know what? I can probably get Stellarium up. Might as well. So
Yeah,
let
solarium.
me do that. Let me share my screen, and we'll talk about that and bring that up. So let me know if you can see that. Looks like you can. Here.
Also, actually, while you're pulling that up, what's interesting about Purim and even Hanukkah, for that matter,
Mm-hmm.
is none of the other Jewish feast days revolve around outside nations, right? So Hanukkah was built upon a Gentile nation and escalation with Israel. Purim was a Gentile nation and escalation with Israel. Um, and so they're unique in that fashion. And that's why I actually kind of think it's interesting that the CV19 was one day after Purim of in 320, 320. March 10th was the last day of Purim, and then 311, the Who came out and was like, "Hey guys, I got some bad news," right? So, um, so you see this worldly event, this global event, that may actually even be directly related with the Abrahamic Accords, and kind of like this unofficial dividing of the land, um, that you see within that plan. So yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Okay, here's the conjunction that Jared was just talking about.
yeah.
Here's Venus and Jupiter right in
Uh huh.
Pisces. But the other thing that someone mentioned to me today was in
Oh,
and around
Jupiter and the Sun.
the Passover time frame. We'll bump it a month here, and you see Jupiter and the Sun here,
Yeah.
and right basically around here, it's almost a conjunction. It's pretty close. Jupiter and the Sun
Uh huh.
are basically, well, they're more or less in conjunction in Pisces right around Passover season.
Yep.
And, sometimes people call this one of the fish the rapture fish and one of the fish the left behind. And some people, they like to, it's the restraining
Mm-hmm.
cetus, you know. And once the restrainer is gone, then there you go. The party
Mm-hmm.
can start. And here's Aries, our Passover lamb. And
Mm-hmm.
oh, yeah. And I showed you earlier. I don't know if I can get my picture up, but I was driving behind a vehicle called Aries. I think it was Aries Company or something. Let me see if I can. Oh, here it is. I don't know if you can see it that good on camera here,
Oh yeah.
but that's
Actually,
pretty neat.
to that point, can you check out Stellarium real quick? Will you just and go to April 30th of 2022? Keeping in mind this conjunction that's happening right now.
Yeah, let's do it. So April 30th, 22. Okay. All right. So we're in 2022 now, and
Okay, down a little bit to the right. Boom. See that guy right there?
yeah, Venus and Jupiter. Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
You see that? So it just happened on April 30th.
Mm-hmm.
Now check out what constellation that's in.
Pisces. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So we have another conjunction, basically a year later, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
The same too. Wow.
Uh-huh. Yeah, it's very, very interesting.
Yeah, and so that's basically today. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Well, I'll keep Stellarium here if we need it. And
Now, what's interesting about that 430 date is that was also the same date as what they called a black moon partial solar eclipse. And the reason why it's called a black moon partial solar eclipse, you know how we have what are they called? A blue moon, which by definition is the second full moon within a 30-day calendar window.
yep.
So if you have a full moon like on the first, and you have like another full moon on the 30th,
Mm-hmm.
the second one is called a blue moon.
Mm-hmm.
That's just how they kind of denote it. Well, anyways, that's why that one is called a black moon partial solar eclipse, is because it's the second new moon within the 30-day window. And so you had that eclipse occurring at the same time as that conjunction. And so this is the second time that conjunction is coming around. So it's really, really fascinating. The implications of that, specifically with Israel, um, and Russia as well. There's a part in Russia that's tied to it. It's actually what my video will be coming out hopefully tonight, maybe tomorrow. But it's actually tied to Pluto's return. And Ezekiel 38 eclipse. So that one that went over Russia. So a lot of this is pointing to Russia getting ready to gear up. And so it's fascinating, the consistency in the pattern, celestially speaking, that God puts in the heavens. And even to that point, and it's kind of a side note from that, but isn't it interesting, the James Webb Telescope and a lot of the discoveries that is producing? Like it just recently shattered cosmology, because they discovered that galaxies, really large galaxies that shouldn't have been formed for what they, say like 3 or 4 billion years, were at the very infant stages of the beginning of the universe. And so now they're going to have to draw back, like, okay, well, maybe it's not 14 billion, maybe it's like 24 billion, because they can't account for why there's even bigger galaxies within 400 to 700 million years of the start of the universe from their secular position. And so it's interesting that when Romans 1:20 says that creation testifies of a creator, it's almost like God is like, look at all of this stuff that, that you guys, think, but you really don't know. Like like your science is shattered. Like like it only points to a creator. This couldn't have just happened randomly. And so, and that's one thing I love about the science aspect of the celestial stuff, because it's all patterns. The prophecy is based on patterns, and so, I mean, it's consistent. Whether you're looking in the sky, you're looking in His Word, you're looking at world events, Haman and Hitler. There's nothing new under the sun, and so God is incredible. Reminds me of Isaiah 46:10, and God declared the end from the beginning. And so God is incredible. His wisdom is amazing. Sovereignty. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
amen, bro.
that's all I got. I'm sorry, I kind of ran on a rant there.
No, creation is awesome and points to Creator, and this Bible is incredible. The fact that it's written by so many different authors at different times, and it all
Yes.
just bleeds together so perfectly.
Yeah.
How do
Yeah.
you say we came from a monkey? I mean, no.
Yeah.
No. So, but anyway, okay. So you had this cool video the other day about earthquakes,
Yeah.
Turkey earthquakes, and relating it to war.
Yep.
You want to touch on that?
Sure. Yeah. So
Yeah.
just a real quick synopsis of that. So I was talking with one of our brothers in Christ, Messianic Jew. So he's really knowledgeable about the Jewish perspective when looking at theology and eschatology and all that kind of stuff. And he even teaches this stuff. But so he's the one that brought this to my attention. And basically, so when World War I started in 1914, there was an earthquake in Turkey that landed on a Jewish holiday, or at least within one day. And then the same thing happened in World War II in 1939. There was an earthquake in Turkey that occurred one day, within one day of a Jewish holiday. And so this recent one on 2/6 landed exactly on 2B Shavat. And so it would imply, based on patterns again, that World War III is imminent. And what's interesting that he added, and I didn't put in the video, and I should have, but that the tradition that that's tied to 2B Shavat has to do with it's a testing of the nations and bearing fruit. And so the nations that don't bear fruit, it's kind of like a reward judgment type of thing. I hope I'm not butchering that, but and so another reason why you'd argue for war is because judgment is coming for particular nations that aren't bearing fruit. It's like that verse. I think it's Peter. I think it's in Acts. But judgment comes to the house of God first, right? And so, yeah, I'll just let that, some part with the Super Bowl Chiefs connection is all about, and um, judgment towards America and the West. Um, there's just a culture shift, that's taken place, and I mean, even Putin himself is calling out these specific details. He's basically calling us a modern day Sodom and Gomorrah. And so, yeah, so definitely God can use who he wants to, judge a nation. And usually that's what war is all about is, God uses war to judge another nation. And so, yeah, so this World War connection and Turkey and landing on a Jewish holiday and being tied to bearing fruit or not bearing fruit, echoes the decline of morality, at least here within America, and the consequences of that. There was a great quote actually by this Russian philosopher. I can't remember her name. But it's to the effect of you can ignore reality, but you can't ignore the consequences of reality. And I think that's what exactly, is at least very much here in the West. There's almost no sense of how quickly this could turn into a hot war any day. And then just even our military prowessness is not at the level that I think a lot of us, at least here in America, believe it is. We've fallen behind the 8 ball, and Russia and China know that. And so, if you were trying to get ahead of someone, this would be an opportune time to do it. And nor do I think that they would allow a stronger president to be put in position that would actually contest that. So, I used to be a Trump fan, not really much anymore, but even if he did get out, or even if he won, I don't think that he would make it into the seat before they would, be like, hey, we got to do something now while the sleepy guy's in there, so, yeah, that's just, war is on the horizon. But what are your thoughts on that?
Well, that sounds good. I wanted you to actually also discuss the Super Bowl, and that you related the Chiefs to Russia, and
Yeah.
The Eagles kind of like to the States or to the UK. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
the Chiefs, they won, and is this a foreshadow of what is to come, kind of thing?
Yeah. Yeah. I think I was talking with Brother Carlo, and he pointed out, I think it was Jeremiah 50, right? So you know how the Chiefs, well, so if you haven't seen that video, so Mahomes' last name means bear. It's the etymology of that name.
It means
And
bear.
so the fact that it's an arrowhead, I know it's really kind of weird, and why would God use Super Bowl and teams and stuff like that? But there does appear to be a pattern. Even if you think about who the Chiefs lost to the previous year, they actually lost to the Bengals, which is interesting because that was the year of the Tiger. And so, but anyways, so Mahomes and the Chiefs are symbolic, at least, of Russia. And so the arrowhead being a strike on the eagle, right? And it's interesting that the quarterback for that team was Jalen Hurts, so it doesn't sound like the Eagles, the Eagles get hurt, so, but even playing on that with the idea of the arrowhead, there's a verse. Oh, here we go. Jeremiah 50. When it talks about a great nation from the land of the north, great nations from the land of the north, this is Jeremiah 50, verse 9. Says their arrows will be like an expert warrior. And so the fact that the Chiefs have the arrowhead and the precision guidance system of the hypersonic missiles, that they don't come back in vain, says who do not return empty-handed. And so, but anyways, there's a connection there with the Chiefs, and then the Eagles represent the USA, and that's coming to a point. But this is the second time, and pointing to a global incident, or what one of my series is called the Amos Code, and how Amos 3:11, which talks about judgment from foreign nations, to America. Well, anyways, and so that's the global incident number 2. The last time the Chiefs won the Super Bowl in 2020, there was a global incident. The San Francisco 49ers being tied to China. And so 38 days from that Super Bowl, you had another global incident with the thing. I don't know how much you can say on YouTube right now.
Yeah, I know.
So hopefully you know what I mean by the CV-19. We'll say that.
Yeah, we all know now. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just really interesting. It's almost like an omen. And actually, to the connections that God's leading you to, man, with the Jeremiah 30 and the 7, it's really interesting because the very first time the Chiefs won a Super Bowl was January 11th. So there's our 11 connection, but it was 23-7. Okay, so 23, and then there's your 7 to your 30. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Like, so it's even really interesting in that regards too.
Yeah. So I started to just bounce around the Bible a bit because I did a big deep dive on the 22s last year and relating it to the year. So now I've been poking around and looking at chapter 23s and chapter 30s and chapter 2s and chapter 3s relating to 2023. And the verse that Jarrett brought up here was Jeremiah 30 verse 7. Alas, for that day is great, so that none is like it, and it is the time of Jacob's trouble, but he shall be saved out of it. So we get this title of Jacob's trouble really from this verse, and it's 30 verse 7. And so 30 being potentially year 2030. You might have 7 years. That gets us to now. Let's get out of here.
Yep.
And I'm sure most of you have seen it by now, but if you haven't, it's good to review some of this information that we brought up. But the fact that Joseph was sold for 20 pieces of silver, Jesus was sold for 30 pieces of silver. Joseph, there was blood put on his garment, but the blood of a goat. And in Matthew 25, it's the sheep and goats judgment at the end, potentially in 2030. We've got the second coming in Revelation 19. Jesus comes in, blood on his robe. He comes to smite, destroy, get her done there. And so we have this interesting connection with 2030. Also, the first miracle that Jesus does is at a wedding, and there's 6 pots and what's the measurements? It's 20 to 30, whatever. I think gallons or whatever, 20 to 30 gallons. Per item, and the transfer of the water to wine. So we got some interesting connections with 2030 and 2023. And even this afternoon, I was reading this verse here, and I'll bring it up here. Why not? We're on the theme of this, and
absolutely. Let's talk about it.
So Genesis 2:22, we know that the rib which the Lord God had taken from the man, he made into a woman, and he brought her to the man. And so, but the next verse is basically the first time Adam officially speaks. And what does Adam officially say in Genesis 2:3? This is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman because she was taken out of the man. And so basically it's like present tense. It's like this is happening now. I am looking at my bride essentially. And we are, the bride of Christ waiting to get out of here and that kind of thing. And so the other fun thing here, so this is the voice of Adam, and Jesus is the second Adam. 1 Corinthians 15:47. The first man was of the earth, made of dust, but the second man is the Lord from heaven. And so the question is the second Adam going to repeat what the first Adam said in Genesis 2 verse 23? Present tense. I'm hoping so. What are your thoughts on this year, Jarrett? We're all guessing and speculating and throwing darts at a dartboard, but what are you thinking about general timing here?
It just seems it's tough because the conservative side of myself, let's be like, let's just be on the safe side, just say 2025, but it's really difficult with the amount of escalation that we see around the world. whether you're talking about U.S. and Russia or U.S. and China now, or Iran and Israel, and the fact that all three of those guys are all, BFFs, and are willing to jump in at any moment if one of them gets attacked. The threshold, I'm not even sure how we'd make it to 2025, let alone 2024. So 2023, in my mind, based on what's happening on the ground, definitely seems a lot more probable. And with a lot of the insights that you have pointed out and that Brother Carlo has pointed out, and matching verses with years, 23 just makes a lot more sense. Even from an Islamic perspective, with being 1335 years from 688.
The Dome of the Rock, yeah.
And the Dome of the Rock. And then you have another one with 1260 being 1948. There's a consistency there. And so 2023 seems to make a lot more sense. What's interesting is that it also it places that half Shemitah cycle that I talked about in one of my other videos. It places on the other side of that. And so 32 and 33 would be the official start of the millennial reign of Christ. And so there's some setup once Christ gets back, apparently a year or two, to get everything in order. Because at some point when the Feast of Tabernacles is happening, I mean, everyone knows, like, hey, send an ambassador to Israel, once a year to celebrate the feast so that he can give you healing leaves to take back to your nation to heal the land. So, there's a whole setup, at least politically, that's there. 2023, 7-year tribulation, going into 2030, maybe 2031, definitely seems a lot. To me, it seems very probable. Just based on stuff that's happening on the ground, and the frequency of escalation is just mind-boggling at this point. It's tough to keep up with all the content. Celestial signs, the significance of the celestial signs, like this Hitler eclipse, this Haman one. I mean, that's when you really ponder on the significance of this, the fact that it lands on his birthday and is the exact same one that occurred when he came to power. Like, it's just like, and it's tied to Haman. Like, it's just like the signs celestially seem to be getting more significant, and increasing in frequency.
This is the April 20th eclipse around the corner. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah.
So remind us again, that's Hitler's birthday.
Uh-huh.
And it's also the day that he came to power.
Yeah. The year that he came to power.
The year that he came to power, and it's his birthday.
Yep. Yeah. Yep. And before that, leading up to it, the eclipses landed on Purim. The eclipses 3 years in a row, starting in 24, 25, and 26, all land on Purim as well. So it's different. It's that symmetrical relationship, like with your 3-2-2-2. So that's an 11 connection. It's a palindrome. It's symmetry. You actually have 11 in your hands. Like, that's your 10th digit. That's your first digit. That's 11. 2, 9. That's 11. 3, 8. That's 11. 4, 7, 11. So anyways, the symmetry is in your hands, right? Or Abba, right? ABBA, right? The structure of sentences, like a day is 1,000 years, 1,000 years a day, right? That's a symmetrical function. So my point is that, what was my point? Oh my goodness. That a lot of these signs, especially celestially speaking, and like with the chief stuff, 11s are just continuing to add up. 9/11 was probably one of the if that was any kind of anchor point to any kind of end time event, it would be 9/11. And the fact that, it was a 254th day, it was flight 11 that hit first. The people on board, the fact that the floors, and it was Tower 47. World Trade Center 7 had 47 floors. Like there's a lot of 11 connections in there that are just difficult. And even if, a lot of, I think you always got to remember that God's always in sovereign control of even the enemy, right? Because Satan couldn't do anything to Job that God wouldn't allow him to do. And so some of these details are so fine tuned that only a sovereign God could cause those kind of details to be put there. And so, but you continue to see this pattern up into 2023 here, and it makes sense for something very big to happen either this year or even on the other side of Nissan 1 going into which, by the way, next Nissan 1 is actually marked with an eclipse. Okay, that's the last leg that goes across America is that
That's
one.
right. Yes, that's right. Yeah, create the
Yeah.
big X. Yeah.
Yep, that's the final leg.
Yeah. Yeah. Now somebody wrote Jacob's trouble, and that reminds me of something else I read this morning.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so where is it when Jacob is wrestling with God? Is that Genesis 32 or is that oh, yeah, it is.
Where is that?
Okay. Genesis 32. Okay.
Okay.
And so we're looking at I was just looking at verse numbers and patterns and chapter patterns and
Sure, yeah.
okay, so 32 representing potentially 2023, but verse 23 it says this is when Jacob is wrestling with God. He took them, sent them over the brook, and sent over what he had. So he took his possessions over and went over in that direction. But above it was 20. Well, I'll just read it. And he arose that
Okay.
night and took 2 wives and 2 female servants and his 11 sons. There's your 11.
Yep.
And crossed over the ford of Jabbok. And then in verse 23, he took them and sent them over the brook and sent over what he had. So they're over there. He took them over there in verse 23.
Yep.
But verse 24 is when he starts to wrestle with God. Then Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until the breaking of day. So is it possible we are represented in that group of 11 sons in verse 23, and he's wrestling with God officially in 24, very possible. But then, okay, you go down to verse 30. And so what does Jacob say? So Jacob called the name of the place Peniel, for I have seen God face to face, and my life is preserved. And so here we have Jacob, and he's in Jacob's trouble. He's wrestling with God during these verses, and it's very interesting. Just I find this kind of fun, finding the number of connections with
absolutely.
with the context.
Yeah,
and
they're in there.
The other thing I found today too was Genesis 30, verse 23. Okay. So I brought up earlier, Joseph was sold for 20 pieces of silver. Jesus was sold for 30. And here we have in Genesis 30, the list of Jacob's sons. And who is listed in verse 23? Well, I'll read the verse just before it.
Okay.
Then God remembered Rachel, and God listened to her and opened her womb. And she conceived and bore a son and said, God has taken away my reproach. So in verse 23, she conceived and bore a son. What was his name? It was Joseph. So she conceived and bore Joseph in verse 23 of chapter 30. And so 30 minus 7, boom, 23.
Yep.
Joseph, a type and shadow of Christ, boom. And
the 11th son too, by the way.
The 11th son. Okay, I have to recount that, but for now, I'll trust your judgment on that. I'm not 100%, but that'd be cool. That'd be cool if that's true. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, Benjamin was 12.
Was it? Okay.
So Joseph is 11. Yeah.
Okay, I've got 13 here for some reason. I don't know why. Why do I have 13? Anyway,
well, he had 2 sons, Ephraim and Manasseh. That might be where.
Maybe that's where I miscounted here. But that'd be super cool if Joseph was number 11 officially.
Yeah, 11 is a good. I'm telling you, man. 11 is predominantly associated with blessings, and so yeah, like with your point there, with Jacob and wrestling with that, That's why I like talking about it's in your hands. You know, it's not chaos and judgment in your hands. I mean, we still get these different bodies, but we still have 10 digits, you know, when we get new bodies. But that same gentleman, our brother in Christ, the Messianic, our Messianic brother, Genesis 1:1, that's where they associate 11 with, is the very beginning of creation. And so you see, that's why Joseph and 11, or the 11 sons with Joseph. That's what actually the whole video about God's promises and the number 11, and why it's connected to that. A lot of believers, like I see 11 all the time. That's why that's a part of that. 11 can mean judgment, but not always. And it would make sense for believers to be seeing 11 if it meant judgment. Yeah. And chaos and disorder, just necessarily. So it's all in context. But 11 is phenomenal. It's a great number. It's the backbone. Actually, can I show you something?
Yeah, sure. And I'll read one verse before I forget it. And while you're getting something here. So 1 Corinthians 15, verse 23. Okay. And verse 24. So here's 23. But each one in his own order, Christ the first fruits, afterward those who are Christ's at his coming. So it's talking about Christ coming in verse 23 of 1 Corinthians 15. And then verse 24, it says, then comes the end, when he delivers the kingdom of God and when he delivers the kingdom of God, the Father, when he puts an end to all rule and all authority and power. Just fun stuff when you see like, okay, maybe. This is also the chapter where it says, in a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, we shall, not all sleep. We should be changed, right? At the last trumpet. And that's 1 Corinthians 15:52. It's actually the chapter when it's talking about the basic salvation, 1 Corinthians 15, 1 through 4.
Yeah.
There's a lot in this chapter, actually.
There's a lot.
And, the first and second Adam in this chapter. And anyway, that's just a fun little connection with 23.
That's a great point. Just that one chapter alone.
Yeah.
Salvation to the end times, one chapter.
It seems like, yeah, exactly. Salvation, interesting stuff in between, little rapture near the end. Oh, death, where's your sting? Oh, Hades, where's your victory? Yeah. But anyway,
it's
go ahead
incredible.
with the point you were wanting to make there.
Yeah, I just think it's really interesting, these 11 connections. Can I share? Can you share the screen, or can I share the screen?
Yeah, you might have to share it first, and then I have to. I think you got to try and share it first, and then I got to accept what you're doing here.
Oh, okay. Let me do that one. Boom. Okay, I think it's ready to go.
Okay, there you go.
Okay, so I don't know if can you see this on your end very well?
Yeah, I can make it a little bigger, but it's pretty big.
So this is kind of the slide called Science of 11, and this is just some of the patterns. So here's a pattern 1, pattern 2, and pattern 3. But anyway, so 11 is significant because we're creating God's image, and that's kind of reflected like what we talked about with the hands. And so God having the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, 3 in 1, right? Well, we also have mind, body, and spirit, and so we're created in that way symmetrically. And so you have this 3 plus 3 connection, and why God's created us on the 6th day. And so there's some 11 relationship there with that. And then here, this is supposed to have like a little X, and then to cross it out. But it's just to say that 1 reflects 1, unlike 1 doesn't reflect 0, or 1 doesn't reflect 2. And so it's just kind of showing this symmetry property here. Actually, this mirror concept of symmetrical reality behind our reality is alluded to in the I Pet Goat 2 video. I don't know if you remember, but there's a scene where the Antichrist is coming out of what looks to be like 4 or 5 different mirrors. That's what that's representing here. It's representing this connection between a spiritual and physical reality here. And CERN, by the way. This is the mathematics behind what CERN is trying to do. But anyways, and then the palindrome connections with like 2032 and or 322. That has to do with this 11 symmetrical line here. You can see that by like 42, its symmetrical flip is 24. Well, all numbers do that. So if you have 3-digit or 4-digit or 1,000-digit numbers, you always will have a symmetrical number on the other side. And right down the middle of that will be numbers that are all perfectly symmetrical, that are all connected to 11.
I see.
And so 11 really is the backbone behind all numbers. It's a lot more significant than just saying it's about a blessing and judgment. It literally underscores mathematics, like the Fibonacci sequence, triangles. This is Pascal's triangle here. If you notice, there's a symmetrical flip about the numbers. You have 1, 2, 1, 1, 3, 3, 1, 1, 4, 6, flips, 4, 1. So Pascal's triangle is symmetrical. It's even related by the powers of 11. 11 to the 0th power is 1. 11 to the 1st power is 11. 11 squared, 121. And so it even generates Pascal's triangle, which is very profound when you think about it, because Pascal's triangle itself literally creates the Fibonacci sequence. So the number 11 is very much, and the Fibonacci sequence is found in your ear, in your cochlea. It's found in the spiral of galaxies. The numbers of it are found in petals of flowers, music. And so 11 underscores everything we see, it's really, really fascinating. So when we see these symmetrical patterns within the text, that's what this is all based off of. It's based off of these connections of symmetry. That's why I put ABBA right here, the ABBA. And so, here's the hydrogen wave function. So this just has to do with the hydrogen atom and the different properties it takes. And so even at the periodic level of elements, there's symmetry. And so there's a lot of profound implications from a quantum mechanics standpoint as well. And so anyways, what's even more interesting too is that these numbers, at least for 2-digit, 4-digit, even number flips, the addition of them, 53 plus 35, is 88. Right. So when you add those symmetrical pairs, they're even related to 11. And so 11 is profound. It really is. But it all goes back to why we're significant to God in the first place, because we're created in his image. And even contrary, or not, but that's why Satan hates us, is because we're created in God's image. And why you see this image again that theme played on in the end times, with Satan wanted people to worship his image, right? So there's theological implications of this, there's mathematical implications of this, scientific implications. Again, this part right here connects us to CERN, and even kind of like the worship of science. People always want to hound on us for looking at celestial signs. Oh, that's astrology. Do. Well, so when you look at it from a personal perspective, yeah, that's a sin. But when you look at the celestial signs that point you to God, okay, that's the correct way. This is the same thing, except from a scientific perspective. Science is supposed to point you to God. Romans 1:20, boom, beautiful. But when you start using science to be like, hey, you know what? Maybe we should try to get into this spiritual world. That's a bad idea. In fact, I would even argue it's kind of connected with Jacob's ladder and what they try to do at the Tower of Babel, right? And why you're starting to see all this quantum mania, CERN type of connections, is because they're literally trying to crack the veil, going from a physical reality to a spiritual reality. I don't have the slide, but Nehemiah 6:15 talks about that. It has to do with the wall that is in construction of the temple during Solomon's time. And it says that they've finished it. They did something within 25 days, or did something in 52 days in 25 years. And so it's that idea of having in the month of Elul. Now, Elul is the 11th month. Okay, so so the wall is connected with 11, and then the dates that are associated around it is the 25th and the 52nd. So you even see this construction within certain dates within the Bible. So it's really fascinating. The level of 11. that plays into our reality. And so in this next video, which talks about the conjunctions, I talk about that because there are a lot of 11 connections within this next video, but I kind of want to make it more like founded on the fact that 11's really found in everything in creation, and God uses this number for a very particular reason to show like his sovereignty over all things. And so, really trying to drive it more from a scientific perspective. And, it's neat. It's really, really neat. And so like when you talk about 322 and the two, understand where that's coming from. That's this 11 symmetrical property. Even Pluto's return with this conjunction actually is that's the anchor point. That was a 222. So it's this whole symmetrical property that makes these dates even significant from that standpoint. So So 322 there, the symmetry. You can tie it back to 11.
He's a god of numbers, okay? He's a god of numbers. He's got everything calculated. He's got a book called Numbers. I mean, hey,
Boom.
we should learn about some numbers, you know? So that's good stuff right there. Speaking about numbers, this came to my memory when you were talking. First Kings 6 verse 2. This is when Solomon built the temple.
Okay.
Now the house which King Solomon built for the Lord, its length was 60 cubits. And its width was 20 and its height was 30. So its width was 20 and its height was 30. 20, 30, 60, 20 times 30 is 600, right? So we got the 60, we got the 30, and we got the 20. We're around 6,000 years since creation, more or less. So we're approaching, again, 2030 minus 7. Bam. Here we are again, folks. You know, we got some more things going on here. And
it's interesting. All those 2030 connections you're finding, like it's interesting when you know what to look for and like you're on the right thread, like they'll just start just like popping up everywhere, you know?
Yeah.
And that's really fascinating.
Yeah, lots of fun things. I think we'll always have, you know, of course we all want to get out of here right now. And of course we will all say, oh, nothing makes sense for next year. And nobody wants to think that we're here next year. But when if we get there, there'll be things to study and things to consider and math to consider and, dates to consider.
I'm hoping it's this month.
I hope it's today, man. Let's get out of here. I've had
March
my rapture.
Is a war month.
I've had my rapture bags packed for a couple of years now, and time to go.
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is.
I'm ready to go, bro. I don't know. Do you want to do some questions or anything like that?
Yeah, you know what? Before we end the stream, why don't we offer you to answer some questions? So if you guys have some questions, throw them on, slam them down. Right question first.
Slam them down.
It could be a comedy question.
Ooh, I like comedy questions.
A lighthearted question, or it could be like a really complicated question. And if we don't know, we'll say I don't know. So Dave says, question, what do you make of Tom Horn saying it's likely 2025 due to Apophis? I don't know who Tom Horn is, so that's not a question for me. Do you know who Tom Horn is?
Yeah. I've seen him on Prophecy Watchers a few times. I mean, I get where he's coming from with 225, but I get there from a different direction. Or at least I see a different connection to 2025. I don't know. I think it's the most conservative year that you could take as far as the rapture, the latest it could come. So I could definitely see an argument for that. I think it's with what we kind of talked about earlier, just with real world events happening and the frequency of them, I just don't know how we get to 2025.
Yeah.
But definitely a great year. That would be the last year I would land on.
For me, I think it's the rapture is an escape from basically war. And so if the nukes are going to fall next week all over the place, then I think that would be the reason why we get out of here.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but hey, who knows? I also think that the beginning of trib would probably start this fall, right around the eclipse in the fall. That's what I'm guessing it's going to start, and back it up about 180 days. I'm hoping we get out of here before the April 20th eclipse. That's my logic right now. And so,
yeah, it would be nice.
Let's see here. Question: could the midnight cry have been February 15th, 15 with the confused moon? Let's see if the bridegroom cometh. How long does it take him to get to the bride? Hmm. Was there anything significant that happened on February 15th, Jared, that you're aware of?
If they're I think, please correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. But I believe it's tied to the unexpected blood moon. I'm gonna put unexpected with
Oh,
quotes.
yeah. Yeah. Over the Sea of Galilee.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Am I correct? Is that what you're referring to?
He or she might be referring to that. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. They said yes. Okay. Um. Okay. So I got good news and bad news about that one. The good news is we have other signs, celestially speaking, to fall back on. The bad news is that if you I don't think everyone's intent is necessarily genuine at times. That's it appears that that's actually photoshopped.
Okay.
The same guy did the same thing 7 years ago over the Sea of Galilee, another unexpected blood moon,
Mm.
and it doesn't. It's not to say that God couldn't do that, but it's odd that the same guy continues to come across the same pattern solely himself. If I recall, I believe he got it from a young lady who's on tour with him. So it's just there's some nuances. I don't believe that actually took place. But again, I think we have the Hitler eclipse. We have these tetrads. One thing that's really interesting about the Israeli tetrad, I forgot to mention, when you add those sorrow cycles up, 121, 126, 131, 136, when you add it up together, it's 514. Someone put that in my comment section. I thought that was really interesting. So it even ties to 514 of 1948. So again, we have a lot more celestial signs that we can fall back on outside of that one. So, so that's just my thought on it.
I'll pop this question up here. Mark Craig says, why did Jesus talk about the fig tree? Could he be giving us a hint that the rapture could be before summer? Summer in Israel starts in June.
It's a great question.
I like right now. I like the idea of going before Passover so we can have our Passover meal with Jesus in heaven. I also like the idea of Joshua. He brings him over just before Passover.
Mm-hmm.
We have a hint at unleavened bread in the story of Sodom and Gomorrah. Lot, they were eating
Mm-hmm.
unleavened bread, which is
Yep.
part of the Passover season.
Mm-hmm.
We have the Passover story in Exodus where Moses takes them out, and they start to do all these plagues before Passover.
Mm-hmm.
Also, Lazarus, we've got he was taken and raised from the dead somewhere between Hanukkah, Feast of Dedication, and Passover. We don't really know what day.
Yeah.
We do have a hint. Jesus says he mentions 12 hours in a day. So, and we know that Lazarus ate a Passover meal with Jesus. I think it says 6 days before Passover. So, what's the day of the year? Is it called the equinox or the equilux, where it's got exactly 12 days in the year, which I think is around March 17th, where the
It's
day.
usually around March. It's usually the 19th, anywhere between the 19th and the 21st, 22nd, every 3 months. So if you just think of the hands on the clock, so 3, 6, 9, 12, usually anywhere between the 19th and 21st is your equinox or solstice.
Yeah, I mean it's an easy thing to Google and to figure it out and to, but my
The 17th, I want to say,
speculation.
is the Enoch thing.
Say that again.
I said the 17th has to do with the Enoch's calendar.
Okay. Okay.
It's kind of loosely based on that, but it's different than why someone would say the 17th. If you're talking about the equinox, and it's going to be like I said, 19th, 21st, 22nd, it
Okay.
changes.
Got it. All right. So so the equinox. So my newest speculation that I'm thinking that Lazarus might have been raised from the dead 2 days after the equinox, because here Jesus is talking about the 12 hours in a day. And then I believe 2 days later, if I'm not mistaken, I'd have to read the whole chapter again really thoroughly. But I believe 2 days after he mentions the 12 hours in a day, Lazarus is raised from the dead. And then that's not too far from the beginning of Passover when Lazarus would have had dinner with Jesus. So that's my guess.
Sure.
But hey, again, we're just speculating here. And could that be tied to the rapture, which would be kind of a random day, right? It wouldn't really be a feast day at all. It's kind of be between the feast days.
That's very true. It depends when you start your calendar year, though. If your Hebrew year, that goes back into the if so if you go with the Enoch calendar, then you're believing that your Hebrew year starts on that. But if you go by a more biblical,
if you're going by the
you
moon
run into
cycle,
issues with passages like Psalm 81:3 that talks about you blow the trumpet on a new moon and on a feast day. When you run it on just March 17th as your day, you no longer will have feast days and new moons being relevant to your appointed feast. So you run into a problem if your hard set date on your calendar beginning on 3/17 for a Hebrew year, because you're no longer following the lunar cycle like what you see in Psalm 183 or Numbers 10, verse 10 as well. So it's tough. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, that's why there's a lot of different angles and perspectives. I think, at least for me, real quick, and another question is. I love that verse about how, all things work together for good for those that love God. Well, we love God. And so the error that we see in these calendars, even though there's some error in there, they all kind of are hinting at the same focal point, even with the error in it. And so that's why I'm not really too hard pressed on it's this calendar, do or die, because to some degree, they all have some relative truth that are all pointing to this time period. So I don't know. I guess if you're looking for a rapture date, then you would probably necessarily need to know the exact calendar that it has to be.
Yeah.
So that's why I don't. It's one reason why I wouldn't do it. It's just me.
I generally gravitate toward the Torah calendar. It seems because they follow the new moon as the beginning of the month, and but sometimes we know that they could be off. So it's kind of an easy thing on my head just to go back and forth between a month here forward or a month backward, depending on the
And we already know their years are off already, right? It's not really 5783, right? So I mean, we already know there's some error there, but at the same time, if you use it's really a 6,000. Well, no longer is it a Jubilee with the error, because the error points to Jubilee right now. But if you have it closer to 6,000, now you're no longer in a Jubilee. And so there's that's what I'm saying. Even with the error, it points us to right now, which is really fascinating, I think.
Like I said, like you said, boots on the ground, looking at what's going on. It's like, okay,
yeah.
The electric currencies around the corner, the CBDC thing, and we can tap our cards, and in some parts of the world, all you do is wave the palm of your hand over certain machines, and you're good to go.
Oh, that's crazy. Yeah,
just with your fingerprints. You don't need any.
Oh yeah.
Because your fingerprint is tied to your Visas or MasterCards or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So digital IDs and things of that nature. So yeah.
Yep.
Oh yeah. So Jeff, thanks for writing this. The Georgia Guidestones were unveiled 3/22.
Ooh.
1980. So thank you for that. That's true. I knew there was more. There's lots of events that happened on 3/22s or 3/20s or
Yeah, if it's interesting. It is definitely very interesting. That Super Bowl connection, 38 days from the 2020 Super Bowl was 3/11. That's TV19. 38 days from this last Super Bowl is 3/22 as well. So even the Super Bowl, I just think it's this. I think it's Adar personally. That's just what I'm going with. It could be absolutely wrong. It could be 99% chance it's wrong. I like Adar. If it starts with an A.
So you like Adar as the rapture? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay. Because it starts with an A.
So I
man.
think, from a linguistic standpoint, it would be first. So that's what I got. A.
Hey, let's dar out of here.
Hey, it's the
Hey.
rapture.
Yeah, I'm
Hey.
Canadian. Hey, let's get out of here. Hey, Dar. Hey, open the door. Hey, Dar. Hey, Dar. Hey, door. Hey, a door. Oh my goodness. Okay, what else do we have here? Is the rapture imminent? And Nancy says, you know what? Yeah, I just simply because we have no clue. We're just humans, just trying this out and we're guessing. And God knows. I don't think it's imminent to God. I think He knows exactly when He's doing it. He's already declared it in His mind. It's just a mystery to us until it happens. So, what do you think, Jared?
Yeah, I think, with the sudden destruction and war, I don't know if we know when that red button's going to get hit. You never really tell your enemies like, hey, I'm getting ready to come attack, so prepare.
Gregory Young says, what is the meaning of life? Okay.
Ooh.
Well, look.
That's a good one. You got it, big dog.
I mean, the most important message for us to be saying here is you've got to get into a relationship with Jesus Christ. The meaning of life is to have eternal relationship with Jesus.
Yes.
That is the main focus of these channels. And how do you do that? Well, you confess with your mouth, believe within your heart that Jesus died for your sins. Yes. And that is your starting point. That is essentially your marriage covenant in a way with Jesus. Romans 10:9-13 is verses that I'd like to read for people. Yes. Ephesians 2:8-9, 1 Corinthians 15:1-4, Romans 3:23 through I think you can go all the way to 30. Why not? But basically, it's all about Jesus. He is perfect. He is the one that died for your sins, and that's the main reason why we started these channels, to get you into a relationship with you, with Christ, and to encourage the people that are already in a relationship with Him.
Yeah,
and so
it's all about relationship, even from the very beginning. When God walked with Adam and Eve, it was all about a relationship, and so Christ brought us back to that point in a very profound way through the Holy Spirit. And Christ did a lot. He did a lot.
Yeah.
He did.
Well, why don't we end it on that note, Brother Jared? That was a really fun live stream.
Yes,
thank you, brother.
Absolutely.
Lots of info there and lots of things to chew on and consider. Guys, be encouraged. We've got to be close. We
have to be.
And you can't put the baby back in once the birth pains happen. You can't push it back up. It's got to come out.
Yeah.
And
there's just too much going on with just global tension, just even from an economic standpoint, as like with the BRICS and taking the petrodollar and just the amount of debt that America's in. Like, it sucks that so much is on America's back, but if that collapses, I mean, it's collapsed everywhere, and usually wars, there's a lot of economic incentives, and so I mean, it just they kind of go hand in hand, and so just everything is pointing to the rapture having to happen very soon, very, very soon. I mean, it's almost like everybody wants to fight right now.
There's just no. It's just like a free for all. It seems pretty soon, right? So.
Yep.
It just takes one country to do something, send a couple bombs at the wrong time at the wrong place, and everything's just gonna. I mean, we already are there. It's already kind of happening. So I just expect more of escalation and then time to fly.
Yep.
So
I agree.
Well, with that, thank you very much for coming on, Jared. Jared's channel.
Thank you for having me.
Design.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for doing some chatting there on some End Times connections, and hope to see you soon, brother. Hope you have an awesome week, and thank you everybody else for coming and checking out the live stream.
Yeah.
Take it easy, okay, guys. Okay.
Bye-bye. Bye dance.
1-1.
Yay. Oh, I'm going to keep going?
The shoulder 1-1.